That's okay. So part of your filtration system is you got values, beliefs, and one of the other things you got was your language. So your language around money, and so if parents said to you when you said, I want to buy, I want this, was we can't afford it, then after a while, how many of you got into the habit of not asking? Yeah, because you knew the answer, didn't you? Yep. But how many of us then take that, and then years later we're in our business, and all of a sudden we go, oh, I can't afford that. And so we may, Georgie Gurgis would probably be grateful that we said we can't afford that, whereas I want to afford it. So it's like how many of us took what we had embedded in our filtration system as a child, and we take that language and we take it right through our life. Now let me tell you how profound this is. That when you say, I can't afford it, every cell in your body on the negative ion has been ignited. So you can't just be sad in one arm. Does that make sense? That little kid that was told we can't afford it, and your business partner or you, when somebody said you can't afford it, the whole body then goes into this really sad state. And you can be, when you're happy all over. That's because every cell in the body has a positive ion on in every cell as well. Does that make sense? So when you're happy all over. When you're sad all over. So that statement's very detrimental, and I was talking to a doctor about it the other day, how detrimental the word can't is opposed to the word can. Right, so if I was to say, and for you to change that statement, all you have to think is, how can I make that happen? What do you say?
How can I make that happen?
So it doesn't matter what comes to you. You can say, how can I make that happen? Because the universe will never give you anything you're not capable of achieving. How cool is that? Oh.
Cool.
Okay.
Very cool.
So my business partner should always say we can afford it, because when he says you can afford it, something happens to me.
No, it might be that we need to say, how can we make that happen? Does that make sense? So, my little drawing here is I draw a circle. And let's say you want a saxophone. Then you put in the circle, the wheels or spokes, and you put in there, what does it look like for you to have that? So the same thing with your business. What does it look like for you to have that, new office chair, or that, new fandangled desk or whatever it is? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. My friend put in the middle here her man, and she rang me up and she said, oh my God, it so works. I've got this beautiful partner now. She said, but there was one thing missing. I said, what's that? She said, hair. I said, well, did you put it in the spoke? She said, no, I forgot. And I've got this beautiful bald partner. She said, well, you get what you put out. This really, really worked. And I'll just share a little story that's true. I did this with 130 people in Melbourne. I asked them to come along a month after I'd done the talk, a weekend workshop, and said, let's work out what's working, what's not working. And they came. And a lady on this side of the room, but everyone brought a friend. 250 people turned up. They had to close the doors. It was so profound. A lady on this side of the room said, can I share with you? And she did. And she said, my daughter wanted to play saxophone, and I said, we can't afford that. And then she goes, Linda Dyer's going to kill me. So she goes to her daughter, she said, look, can we start this whole conversation again? She said, Mum, I know what I want to do, you're just not listening. She said, you hate washing the car, and we hate watching you wash the car and hearing the language. Why don't you just pay me $8 to wash the car? And don't you think some of the cul-de-sac will also want us to wash their car? She said, I've got it all worked out. With 3 car washes on a weekend, I can afford the saxophone. And her mother said, go for it. And she said, all I'm missing is the $20 a month that I need to actually pay for the saxophone. I've only got the money for the lessons. Her mother said, well, I'll help you with that until that happens. Now, this is no word of a lie. A lady on this side of the room, 250 people stood up, and she said, I'm a grandmother, and I would love one of my grandchildren to play saxophone, so I went and bought one. I forgot to ask the grandchildren if that's what they wanted to do. And none of them want to play saxophone. I would like to give your daughter the saxophone that I bought.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't that give you tingles?
Yeah.
Now that's all because we looked at how can I make playing saxophone happen. Does that make sense? Mm. It is so easy. When you sit down and you say, how can I make this happen? I work with this with real estate. I work with this with kids that just want a bicycle. Does that make sense? I work with this when I do relationship coaching. How can we make that happen? Do you see how calming it is? Because now we're negotiating, now we're talking together on how something can happen, and all of a sudden the whole money concept has gone out of the way. We're just negotiating on how possible it is to make that happen and set a goal in the future for that to happen, rather than be doting on old language. This is an old habit. And in order for you to let that old habit of language go, that you can't do that, then by making something happen over and over again, you are doing the same habit. You are enforcing it positively rather than going back on an old habit that isn't serving you anymore. So who'd like to change their money mindset? That means you've got to change your language. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
How long does it take to change a habit? Because I read quite a few. Everyone.
Well, there's a lot of different theories around 21 days. It takes 21 days to change a habit. However, I say to people, start on the first day of the month and give yourself a month, because if you don't do it one day, you have to start again. For example, the first 2 habits I would get everyone to change, I only do 2 a month, by the way, is responding instead of reacting. Would that be good? And because it's challenging in Sydney traffic.
Just had to bring that up.
Yeah. So, yeah, responding versus reacting is huge, and it will change the whole way you communicate at home, to yourself, in your business, and to everybody else. When you just respond to whatever's happening over the phone, in business, etc. Yeah? How can I make this happen? It's the same conversation. Yeah?
What was the second?
Thank you.
Respond versus reacting, and the other one about looking at you in the mirror. What is great about me? Rather than giving yourself a hard time all the time. Yeah, what is there that's great about me? Because when I get people to write that down, they're very few. When I get them to write down what they'd like to improve on, I have to hand toilet rolls out. Yeah, we're really big on kicking ourselves up. So what would be great is for you to recognise what is great about you, and when you run out, you just say, and what else? And what else? It's called emptying out. What else? And that's great. What else? When we say that's great, you are talking to the subconscious mind, who's the child of you, and they love being told they're great. Yeah? Have you ever spoken to a child and you say, that's great, and then you go in with whatever you need to do, because subconscious mind. So some of you are nodding your head. I look at that before you speak. Sometimes as a coach, I've already got the answer from your body, and then I have to wait for your words. Because your body is 55 to 75% of you is body language, is it not? And 7% is words. So your body speaks before you do. So your language around money can change very quickly when you say, how can I make that happen?
We have time for one last question.
Any more questions? This is exactly how I live. Every single day I work out how can I make that happen. Now I took a book, you know, my Good Grief book. I took it to China, had it translated into Chinese. I don't speak a word of Chinese. And I took it up into the earthquake zone. 10 million people were displaced in that. And 5,000 copies of my book are now distributed right through China. And I don't speak one word of Chinese. And if you think you can get past the Chinese army, good luck to you. But I just knew that when I say, how can I make it happen, that I'd be able to do that, and I did. The Chinese army guy got in the car and said, I'll take you. He said, I'm going to get into trouble, but I'll take you. Of course he is. Because I'm only working on how can I make it happen. And as Jenny said, and a lot of people came together to help. Okay? Thank you.